I knew something was wrong the moment Patricia from Human Resources set the manila folder on the glass table. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and corporate panic. My name was printed in bold letters across the front. My boss, Derek Hayes, sat across from me with his arms folded, wearing that fake concern expression he practiced in mirrors. Patricia opened the folder and slid a document toward me. Incident report was stamped across the top in red ink. I scanned the first paragraph and felt my stomach drop. It accused me of negligence that endangered client data. My hands. The dates. The specific accusations. None of it matched reality, but it was detailed enough to sound convincing. Derek cleared his throat. This is obviously a serious matter, Jordan. We need to understand what happened with the Berkshire account. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who'd praised my work 3 weeks ago was now treating me like a criminal. Patricia's pen tapped against her notepad. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything felt too bright, too sharp. Pending our investigation, Patricia said, her voice flat and rehearsed. You're suspended effective immediately. The word suspended echoed in my skull like a gong. The walk from that conference room to my desk felt like a funeral march. My badge still worked when I swiped it at the security gate, but something fundamental had shifted. I could feel it in the air, thick and wrong. Nobody looked at me directly. Kevin from accounting suddenly became fascinated with his keyboard. Brianna turned toward her monitor as I passed, her shoulders tensing. The usual office chatter died like someone had hit a mute button. I grabbed my jacket from my chair and noticed my email icon blinking. 73 new messages. I didn't open them. My hands were shaking too badly to trust myself with the mouse. By lunchtime the whispers started. I heard them from the break room while I was clearing out my coffee mug. Fragments of sentences. My name mentioned in hushed tones. Someone laughed nervously, then went quiet. I was packing my personal items when I heard Derek's voice from around the corner. He was talking to someone near the copy machine. Froze listening. I didn't want it to go this far, Derek said, his voice carrying that false sympathy he was so good at. But when someone makes mistakes this big, you have to protect the team. My jaw clenched. Mistakes I didn't make. 6 months earlier everything was different. I was the person Derek called when problems needed fixing. The go-to specialist. The one who stayed late when systems crashed and came in early when deadlines moved up. I remembered the first time he praised my work in a team meeting. Jordan's the reason we didn't lose the Hampton contract, he'd announced, gesturing toward me like I'd won an award. Give credit where it's due. Everyone applauded. Felt proud. Valued. Derek would stop by my desk with his coffee mug, leaning against the cubicle wall. Got a minute? He'd ask, though it was never a question. He'd outline some crisis, some disaster that needed immediate attention. I know you can handle this, he'd say, clapping my shoulder. You always do. And I did handle it. Every time. I fixed budget errors. I salvaged presentations. I cleaned up data inconsistencies that would have cost us contracts. But there was one phrase Derek used that I should have paid more attention to. He'd send me late-night emails with urgent tasks attached, always ending with the same instruction. Just handle it. No need to loop me in on the details. At the time I thought it meant he trusted me. Now I understood it differently. Sitting at home that first night of suspension I couldn't sleep. My brain kept replaying moments I'd ignored. Small things that seemed annoying at the time, not dangerous. There was the client presentation where I'd spent 2 weeks building the financial model. Derek presented it to the board, and when they praised the analysis, he smiled and said, "Thanks, I worked really hard on this one." Been standing right there. There was the time I caught an error in the quarterly report that would have embarrassed us in front of investors. I fixed it, sent Derek the corrected version, and he forwarded it to leadership without mentioning my name. When they congratulated him on his attention to detail, he accepted without correction. I remembered meetings where I'd suggest solutions, only to have Derek shoot them down. Then, days later, he'd present the exact same ideas as his own. When I pointed out the similarity, he'd shrug. Great minds think alike, I guess. There were emails too. Times when I'd send him detailed explanations of problems and solutions, and he'd respond with a quick "noted" before forwarding my work to upper management with his name as the sender. But one email suddenly stood out in my memory. One specific message that now felt different in light of everything. The incident HR was investigating happened 3 weeks ago. I remembered that Tuesday morning clearly because Derek had called me into his office first thing. "We've got a situation with Berkshire," he'd said, pacing behind his desk. "They're threatening to pull their account if we don't fix the data integration by end of day." He'd handed me a USB drive. "Everything you need is here. I need you to manually upload these files to their portal. Override the automated system. It's glitching." It hesitated. "Shouldn't IT handle manual overrides? That's outside normal protocol." Derek waved his hand dismissively. "IT's backed up for 2 days. This is urgent. I'm authorizing it. Just get it done." So I did. I followed his instructions exactly. I uploaded the files, documented the process in my work log, and sent him a completion report. He'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji. 3 weeks of silence. Then suddenly this incident report, claiming I'd accessed client data without authorization and violated security protocols. The report made it sound like I'd gone rogue. Like I'd acted alone without approval. But I hadn't acted alone. And sitting there in my apartment, I realized something important. I still had every message from that week. Every email. Every chat log. Every timestamp. Derek had been careful to keep his name off official documentation. But he hadn't been careful enough. HR scheduled my first interview for Friday morning. Patricia sat across from me with a recording device between us. She looked tired, like she'd spent the week reading policy manuals. "We need you to explain your version of events," she said, clicking her pen. "Why did you access the Berkshire account outside normal procedures?" Took a breath. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply walked through that Tuesday morning step by step. Derek's request. The USB drive. His authorization. The completion report I'd sent him. Patricia took notes without expression. "Do you have documentation of this authorization?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I can provide the email chain, the chat logs, and my work log from that day." She paused, pen hovering over her notepad. "You have all of that." "I document everything," I said calmly. "It's part of my process." Patricia's expression shifted slightly. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or possibly concern that this wasn't going to be as straightforward as Derek had made it sound. She shuffled papers, then looked up. "We'll need copies of everything you mentioned. Submit them by Monday." "Of course," I said. She scheduled a second interview for the following week. As I left, I noticed her staring at her notes with a frown. The weekend dragged. Monday brought more silence. Tuesday, Wednesday. My phone stayed quiet except for automated payment reminders and spam calls. But Derek's confidence grew. I could see it in the updates from former coworkers who still texted me. He walked taller in meetings, spoke louder during presentations, laughed more freely in the break room. Thursday afternoon, my phone finally buzzed. Derek's name appeared on the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button, then I answered. "Hey, Jordan." His voice had that casual friendliness that made my skin crawl. "How are you holding up?" "I'm suspended, Derek." "How do you think I'm holding up?" "Right. Listen." He cleared his throat. "This whole thing got blown out of proportion. You know how HR is, they have to investigate every little thing. But between you and me, this could have been handled privately." "Privately?" "Like sweeping it under the rug. Like making me apologize for something I didn't do wrong." "I'm not sure what you mean," I said carefully. "Come on. We're both adults here. Maybe you admit you got a little confused about protocols, signed some training acknowledgement form, and we all move on." "Confused about protocols you told me to ignore?" Silence stretched between us. That's not what happened, Derek said, his voice hardening. You're misremembering. I have the emails. Another pause. Longer this time. Let's talk face to face, he said finally. I'll see you when HR calls us both in, I replied and hung up. That phone call triggered another memory. I'd been working at the company for 8 months when Calvin Brenner, one of the senior analysts, pulled me aside after a meeting. Watch yourself around Derek, Calvin had said, glancing over his shoulder. He's good at making problems disappear by making people disappear. I'd laughed it off. Come on. He's been great to me. Calvin's expression stayed serious. He was great to me too. Right up until he wasn't. Just keep records of everything. Trust me. I'd nodded politely and forgotten about it. Calvin left the company 2 months later, and I never thought to ask why. Now, sitting in my apartment, I wondered what had happened to Calvin. I pulled up LinkedIn and found his profile. He was working at a competitor, thriving by the look of his recent posts. On impulse, I sent him a message. Hey, long time. Quick question. Would you be willing to talk about your time at the company? He responded within an hour. Absolutely. I've been waiting for someone to ask. I have a lot to say about Derek Hayes. The next morning I woke to another message from Calvin. Just submitted a request to speak with HR. Thought they should hear about the pattern before it happens again. My heart raced. I wasn't alone. That weekend, I sat at my kitchen table with a laptop and a printer. The folder I'd been building sat beside me. Digital and physical copies of everything. Not revenge documentation. Just receipts. Email chains showing Derek's requests. Screenshots of chat conversations where he gave explicit instructions. My work logs with timestamps. Completion reports he'd acknowledged. Even the USB drive he'd handed me. Still in my desk drawer with his fingerprints probably on it. I organized everything chronologically. Request. Response. Completion. Acknowledgement. One document stood out. An email from Derek dated the day before the incident. He'd written, Jordan will be handling the Berkshire integration tomorrow. I've authorized the manual upload process to expedite resolution. He'd sent it to himself. Probably meant to save it as documentation of his decision-making. But he'd accidentally CC'd me. I held the printed copy up to the light. This single page contradicted everything in his incident report. He'd claimed I acted without authorization. But here was his own email, proving he'd given that authorization explicitly. I made 3 copies. One for HR. One for my records. One for my lawyer if it came to that. Monday morning I submitted my documentation package to Patricia. 37 pages of evidence. Organized and indexed. I didn't editorialize. Didn't add commentary. Just facts, dates, and direct quotes. The ball was in HR's court. The second interview happened on Wednesday. Patricia looked less rehearsed this time. She had my documentation spread across the table. Color-coded tabs marking specific pages. I need to clarify some timeline discrepancies, she said, flipping to a highlighted section. On October 15th, you claim Derek requested this action. But according to his statement, he was in meetings all morning. Check his calendar, I said. He had a meeting from 8 to 9. Our conversation happened at 9:15 in his office. I have a chat message timestamped 9:17 where I confirmed I'd start the work. Patricia made notes, then cross-referenced something on her laptop. Her expression tightened. And this authorization email, she continued, holding up the document I'd flagged. Derek states he never sent this. The email server keeps permanent records, I said. IT can pull the original with metadata showing exactly when it was sent and from which device. Patricia stopped mid-sentence. She stared at the document, then at her screen, then back at the document. We're going to need to verify some things, she said carefully. This interview is paused. We'll reconvene when we have more information. She gathered her papers and left quickly, like someone who'd just realized they were investigating the wrong person. I sat there alone in that glass conference room, watching office life continue on the other side of the walls. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift. The weight wasn't on me anymore. Derek's confidence evaporated. I heard about it through Brianna, who texted me Friday afternoon. He's freaking out. Keeps asking people if they've talked to HR. Looks like he hasn't slept in days. Sunday night, my phone buzzed with an email from Derek. Subject line: checking in. The message was 3 paragraphs of corporate speak that basically asked if I'd told HR everything, or if there was room for clarification on misunderstandings. I didn't respond. Monday morning, another email. This one shorter, more direct. We should talk before this goes further. I didn't respond. Tuesday afternoon, Derek cornered me in the parking lot outside the building. I'd come in to drop off additional documentation Patricia had requested. Jordan, wait. He jogged over, slightly out of breath. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose. We need to talk. Through HR, I said, unlocking my car. Don't do this. His voice had an edge now. Do you know how replaceable people are? How easy it is to end up blacklisted in this industry? I turned to face him. Is that a threat? It's reality. You think any company will hire you after this? After you caused all this drama? I didn't cause anything, Derek. I just told the truth. His jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made, I said, opening my car door, was not keeping records sooner. His face went pale. I drove away, watching him shrink in my rearview mirror. He wasn't scary anymore. He was scared. The following Monday, Patricia called me. We're nearing a conclusion on the investigation. I need you to come in Friday morning. My stomach dropped. 2 weeks of waiting, and now it was ending. I prepared myself for the worst. Termination, damaged reputation, months of unemployment while I tried to rebuild my career. I couldn't eat Thursday night. Couldn't sleep. I ran through every possible outcome, every worst-case scenario. Friday morning, I dressed in my best interview suit. If they were going to fire me, I'd at least look professional while it happened. Patricia was waiting in the same conference room. But this time she wasn't alone. Kenneth Price, the VP of Operations, sat beside her. His presence changed everything. VPs didn't attend routine termination meetings. Thank you for coming in, Patricia said. We have one final clarification we need. She opened her folder and pulled out a meeting schedule from 6 months ago. There was a project kickoff meeting on April 22nd. Do you remember who attended? I frowned, trying to recall. Derek and I were there. Probably accounting too. Why? Can you describe what happened in that meeting? Derek presented a workflow plan for the spring contracts. He said it was his new efficiency model. Kenneth leaned forward. Do you have any documentation showing who actually created that model? My breath caught. I do. I built that model. I have the original files with creation dates and edit history. Patricia and Kenneth exchanged glances. We'll need those files, Kenneth said. I explained everything about that April meeting. How I'd spent 3 weeks building a workflow optimization model. How I'd sent it to Derek for review. How he'd presented it as his own work without crediting me. Patricia took notes silently while Kenneth pulled up his own laptop and cross-referenced dates. The edit history shows initial creation on April 1st, Kenneth said, reading from his screen. Last modified by you on April 18th. Sent to Derek on April 19th. Presented on April 22nd with no authorship credit. He nodded. I didn't make a big deal about it at the time. I thought maybe he'd forgotten to mention my name. This wasn't the only instance, Patricia said, pulling out more documents. We found similar patterns with the Hampton contract, the quarterly budget analysis, and at least 4 other major projects. My hands felt cold. They'd found the pattern. They were connecting dots I hadn't even shown them yet. Kenneth closed his laptop. We need to schedule another interview. But this time it won't be with you, Patricia added. Actually, we need to interview several people. Starting with Derek. They thanked me and asked me to remain available. As I left, I saw Derek walking toward the conference room from the opposite direction. Our eyes met across the hallway. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. The atmosphere shifted completely. Within 48 hours, Patricia's tone changed from investigative to apologetic. She called me Tuesday morning with an update I wasn't expecting. "We're expanding our investigation," she said carefully. "We've discovered inconsistencies in several past incidents and project attributions." Past incidents? Yes. Events predating your employment. Similar patterns of responsibility being redirected. My mind flashed to Calvin Brenner. "Are you talking to former employees?" "We're talking to everyone we can find," Patricia confirmed. "And Jordan, I need to ask you something directly. Has this pattern of behavior happened before? With other projects or situations you haven't reported?" I thought about every project Derek had claimed. Every late night I'd worked while he took credit. Every time I'd swallowed my frustration because I thought that's just how corporate life worked. "Yes," I said. "Many times." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Can you document those instances?" "I already have," I said. "I've been documenting everything for the past 6 months. I just didn't realize what I was documenting until now." "Send me everything. Timeline doesn't matter. If you have records, we need them." I spent the next 2 days compiling a comprehensive file. Project files, email chains, meeting notes, time logs. Every instance where Derek had taken credit, redirected blame, or covered his tracks. The file was 73 pages long. Throughout the following week, I watched from outside as colleagues I'd worked with for years were called into HR meetings. Kevin from accounting. Brianna from client services. Even the IT director. One by one they confirmed pieces of the puzzle. Small things they'd noticed but never reported. Patterns they'd dismissed as personality quirks or management style. Brianna texted me after her meeting. "Why didn't I say something sooner? I saw him do this to you so many times." Kevin called me directly. "They asked about the quarterly reports. I told them you built the analysis model that Derek presented to the board. I should have said something when it happened." The IT director sent a brief email. HR pulled server logs. They found deleted emails Derek thought were gone. They're not gone. What I thought was my isolated incident was actually one thread in a tapestry of manipulation spanning years. HR wasn't just investigating the Berkshire situation anymore. They were investigating Derek's entire tenure. Patricia called on Thursday. "We've reopened 4 previous incident reports that were closed and filed under Derek's management. All of them show similar patterns." "Similar how?" "Yes. Blame assigned to individuals who weren't actually responsible. Documentation that doesn't match server records. Authorization trails that disappear." "How many people?" I asked quietly. "Including you." 6 that we know of so far. Felt sick. This wasn't just about me. It never had been. The following Monday, everything cracked open. Derek showed up to the weekly department meeting looking haggard. His shirt wasn't pressed. His tie hung crooked. The confident swagger was gone. Kenneth Price attended the meeting, which never happened. VPs didn't sit in on routine team updates. His presence made everyone nervous. Derek tried to run the meeting normally, pulling up slides for the quarterly review. But his hands shook enough that the laser pointer danced across the screen. "Let's talk about the Berkshire account recovery," Derek started. "Thanks to quick action, we prevented a major client loss." Kenneth interrupted. "Who performed that recovery work?" Derek blinked. "Well, the team collaborated." "Who specifically did the technical work?" "It was a team effort." "Answer the question, Derek." The room went silent. People stared at their laptops, their notepads, anywhere but at Derek or Kenneth. "Jordan handled the technical integration," Derek finally admitted. "Under whose authorization?" Derek's face reddened. "It was authorized through proper channels." "That directly contradicts your incident report from 3 weeks ago." Which version is accurate? Derek couldn't answer. He opened his mouth twice, closed it, looked around the room like someone might help him. Nobody did. We'll continue this discussion privately, Kenneth said, standing. Derek, come with me. Meeting's over, everyone. We filed out in silence. Derek looked back at me as he followed Kenneth. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was pleading, desperate. I didn't look away. While suspended, I'd started sending out resumes. Not because I'd given up on vindication, but because I needed options. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Never depend entirely on one employer's mercy. 3 interviews came back positive. The best one was with a firm that specialized in data integration consulting. They needed someone with my exact skill set, and they were offering 15% more than my current salary. During the final interview, the hiring manager asked the expected question. Why are you looking to leave your current position? I'd rehearsed this answer carefully. I'm looking for an environment where individual contributions are recognized and supported. I've reached a point where I need a change. I didn't mention Derek. Didn't mention the investigation. Didn't badmouth anyone. I simply described what I wanted in my next role. Transparency, recognition, growth. The hiring manager smiled. We value people who value themselves. When can you start? I'm currently finishing up some matters with my previous employer. I can start in 2 weeks. They sent the offer letter that afternoon. Better title. Better pay. Better everything. I signed it immediately. Even if HR cleared my name, I realized I didn't want to go back. The damage Derek had done wasn't just to my reputation. It was to my trust in that workplace. I deserved better than waiting to see if they'd believe me. I forwarded the signed offer letter to my personal email and set it aside. Insurance policy. No matter how the investigation ended, I had a way forward. HR requested one final round of documentation. Patricia's email was detailed. We need all communication related to the Berkshire incident, including preliminary discussions, authorization records, and post-completion reports. I submitted everything. Every email. Every chat log. Every file timestamp. But I saved one piece for last, the most damning evidence. It was the approval form Derek had signed. Not digitally, physically. I'd asked him to sign off on the manual override process because I wanted protection if something went wrong. He'd waved it off as unnecessary but signed it anyway because it was faster than arguing. I'd kept that form in my desk drawer. Now I had it scanned in high resolution, with his signature clearly visible next to the date, the specific action authorized, and the client name. It was physical proof that couldn't be deleted or altered or explained away. I submitted it as the final attachment to my documentation package. Patricia responded within an hour. Received. This closes our information gathering phase. Investigation will be concluded by end of week. The waiting felt different this time. Not anxious, just patient. I'd done everything I could. The evidence spoke for itself. Friday morning, Patricia called. Can you come in Monday morning at 9? Leadership needs to meet with you. Am I still suspended? Yes. Not anymore. You're reinstated as of today. But please come in Monday. It's important. Her tone had completely changed. This wasn't HR investigating an employee. This was HR trying to fix a mistake. Monday morning, I walked into that glass conference room for what I hoped was the last time. Patricia was there. Kenneth was there. And so was Veronica Shaw, the Chief Operations Officer. Derek sat at the far end of the table, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His shoulders hunched forward. His hands clasped tightly in his lap. Thank you for coming in, Veronica said, her voice formal but not unkind. We've concluded our investigation into the Berkshire incident and related matters. She opened a folder and began reading from an official report. Timeline, actions, authorization chains. Everything laid out in clinical detail. Based on documented evidence, we've determined that Jordan acted appropriately and within authorized protocols on October 15th. The incident report filed against Jordan contained factual inaccuracies and misrepresented the authorization chain. Derek's jaw clenched. Veronica continued reading. Furthermore, our investigation uncovered a pattern of similar incidents spanning Derek Hayes's tenure as department manager. These include improper credit attribution, unauthorized report modifications, and repeated integrity violations. Each sentence dismantled Derek's version of events. Each paragraph revealed another lie he'd told. By the time Veronica finished reading, Derek was staring at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "Derek, do you have anything to say?" Kenneth asked. Derek's mouth opened, but Veronica cut him off. "Before you respond, be aware that everything you've claimed has been contradicted by server logs, document timestamps, and witness testimony." Derek closed his mouth. His story had collapsed sentence by sentence, and he knew it. Veronica laid out the full scope of what they'd discovered. Not just my situation, but a pattern that stretched back years. Projects where Derek took credit for others' work. Incidents where he redirected blame to protect himself. Reports he'd altered after meetings to change what was discussed. We found 6 separate instances where employees were disciplined based on incident reports that directly contradicted server records, Veronica said. In each case, Derek was the filing manager. The room went silent. Even Patricia looked shocked at the scope. We also discovered that Derek deleted email chains from his account following several projects, attempting to remove evidence of authorization he'd given. IT was able to recover those emails from backup servers. Kenneth added, "The most concerning finding was the pattern of employees leaving the company shortly after disputes with Derek. When we reached out to former staff, 4 of them reported similar experiences." Calvin Brenner's name appeared on the screen behind Veronica. Then 3 others I recognized. All talented people who'd left abruptly. All with similar stories. Derek tried to speak. "This is all documented," Veronica interrupted. "Everything we've stated is documented and verified. The evidence is conclusive." Derek's face went pale. He looked at me across the table, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret, or maybe just fear of consequences. "Derek Hayes, your employment is terminated effective immediately for integrity violations, falsification of reports, and repeated misconduct," Veronica said. "Security will escort you from the building." Nobody spoke as 2 security officers entered and stood by the door. Derek stood slowly. He looked around the room one last time, then walked out without a word. After Derek left, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Veronica turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Jordan, on behalf of the company, I apologize. You were treated unfairly, and we failed to recognize the pattern of behavior that should have been addressed years ago." Patricia added, "Your personnel file will be updated to reflect that all disciplinary actions have been removed. The incident report has been expunged. Your record is completely clean." Kenneth slid a folder across the table. "We'd like to discuss your future with the company. We're prepared to offer you Derek's position, along with a significant salary adjustment and a formal apology in your permanent file." I looked at the folder without opening it. 3 weeks ago this would have felt like vindication. Getting Derek's job. Getting recognized. Getting everything he'd tried to take from me. But now, sitting in that conference room, I realized I'd already moved forward. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully. "But I need to be honest with you." I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. I slid it across the table to Veronica. "This is my resignation letter," I said. "I've accepted a position elsewhere. My last day will be 2 weeks from today." Patricia's eyes widened. Kenneth looked surprised. Veronica opened the envelope and read quickly. "Jordan, please reconsider," Veronica said. "We recognize your value. Name your terms." "It's not about terms," I said. "It's about trust. This investigation proved I was right, but it shouldn't have taken weeks of documentation and former employees speaking up for you to believe me." Veronica set down my resignation letter and leaned back in her chair. Is there anything we can do to change your mind? Thought about it. Really thought about it. They were offering me everything I'd wanted before this started. Recognition, a better position, more money, an apology on record. But I'd spent 3 weeks watching people avoid eye contact in hallways. I'd spent sleepless nights wondering if my career was over. I'd felt the weight of being presumed guilty until I could prove innocence with mountains of documentation. That kind of experience changes you. You could implement better protections, I said. So the next person Derek targets doesn't have to go through what I did. You could establish clear documentation requirements for all disciplinary actions. You could make it policy that employees have access to all evidence against them before suspension. Veronica nodded slowly. Those are reasonable requests. We'll implement them. Good, I said. But I'm still leaving. Kenneth tried one more time. We're prepared to offer significant compensation. I already signed an offer with another company, I interrupted. Better role, better pay, and honestly better culture. They didn't need an investigation to believe me when I told them what I could do. They just looked at my work. Patricia looked down at her notes. Kenneth closed his laptop. Veronica picked up my resignation letter again. We understand, Veronica said finally. And we're sorry we lost you this way. If you ever reconsider, the door is open. I appreciate that, I said. But I won't be coming back. I stood up and shook their hands. Professional to the end. As I walked out of that conference room, I felt lighter than I had in months. 2 weeks later, I worked my final day. I organized my files, transferred projects, and said goodbye to colleagues who'd become friends. Kevin stopped by my desk. I'm really sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You spoke up when it mattered, I said. That's what counts. Brianna brought me coffee. The new place is lucky to have you. Thanks. And thanks for the texts during everything. They helped more than you know. I left at 5 o'clock sharp, carrying a box of personal items and a clean conscience. 3 weeks after that, I saw the company announcement in my LinkedIn feed. Derek Hayes has left the organization to pursue other opportunities. We thank him for his service and wish him well. No mention of termination. No mention of the investigation. Just the corporate euphemism for, we fired him but don't want a lawsuit. Then I saw the second announcement. We're implementing new employee protection policies to ensure fair treatment and transparent documentation in all disciplinary matters. At least something good came from it. A month after I started my new job, I ran into Derek at a coffee shop. Pure coincidence. I was meeting a client, and he was sitting alone at a corner table. He saw me. I saw him. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stood up and walked over. Jordan. Can we talk? I glanced at my watch. I have 5 minutes before my meeting. He sat down across from me, uninvited. He looked tired. Older somehow. I wanted to apologize, he said. Waited. I got scared when I made that mistake with Berkshire. I panicked and tried to protect myself. I didn't think about what it would do to you. You didn't just try to protect yourself, I said quietly. You tried to destroy me to save yourself. There's a difference. Derek's hands wrapped around his coffee cup. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, something else. Like his confidence had been his only real size, and without it, he was just another person who'd made bad choices. I know, he said. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. To you. To the others. The others. Yes. Calvin. The people before you. I convinced myself I was just doing what everyone does. Protecting my position. But it was more than that. I was scared of being exposed as not as good as people thought I was. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to be angry. Part of me wanted to tell him exactly how much damage he'd caused. But mostly I just felt tired of the whole thing. You asked if there was anything you could do, he continued. Back during the investigation. I'm asking now. Can I help clear anything up? References. Recommendations. Anything. I looked at him. really looked at him. He wanted absolution. He wanted me to say it was okay, that we could move past it, that his apology somehow balanced the scales. But some things don't balance out with words. The truth already cleared everything up, I said. I don't need anything from you. His face fell. He'd been hoping for forgiveness, or at least acknowledgement that he'd tried to make amends. I have a meeting, I said, standing up. Good luck with whatever you're doing now. Jordan, wait. I didn't wait. I walked to my client meeting without looking back. Later that evening I thought about that conversation. Derek wanted me to absolve him. To tell him he wasn't a bad person, just someone who made mistakes. But that wasn't my responsibility. He had to live with what he'd done. That was his weight to carry, not mine. I carried enough weight for both of us. 6 months into my new job, I realized something important. The experience with Derek hadn't broken me, had clarified me. I knew my worth now. Not because someone told me, but because I'd fought for it and won. I'd stood up for myself when it would have been easier to accept blame. I'd documented everything when it would have been simpler to trust that fairness would prevail on its own. I'd learned that justice doesn't shout. It doesn't storm into rooms making demands. It stands firm and lets the truth do the work. My new company valued me immediately. My manager praised my work in meetings and credited me by name. When I caught errors or suggested improvements, people listened. When I accomplished something difficult, the recognition came naturally. This was what normal looked like. What Derek's department should have been. I thought about Calvin sometimes, and the others who'd left before me. I wondered if they'd found places like this too. Places where they didn't have to fight to be seen. One afternoon my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn message. It was from someone I didn't know, a woman named Teresa Walsh. I'm currently dealing with a situation at my company similar to what you described in your profile. Would you be willing to talk? I stared at the message for a moment. Then I typed back. Absolutely. Document everything. Keep records. You're not alone. Because that's what this whole experience taught me. Not everyone who seems powerful actually is. Not everyone who seems invisible actually lacks power. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one who changes everything. Derek had tried to destroy my reputation to save his own. Instead, he'd destroyed his career while teaching me exactly how strong I was. The incident report he filed to bury me became the shovel that dug his own grave. I walked away with my reputation intact, a better job, and the knowledge that I could survive someone actively trying to ruin me. Derek walked away with nothing but the memory of how he'd lost everything by underestimating the person he thought would be easiest to blame. Justice didn't need to be loud, just needed to be thorough. And I was very, very thorough.